This is TWiT.
So we, of course, are talking about the new Apple Watches and iPhones, and we're kicking things off with arguably one of the most exciting new features. It's a hardware feature, the new camera system on the Pro. Yeah, Alex, you said that you were watching the event live with a group of many people, and there was a collective gasp as the air ran out of the room at the new cameras. Tell us about that.
Really?
It was about 100 of us watching on after hours. So we were all sitting there watching, and the real excitement was when they said you could hook a hard drive and shoot to the hard drive from the camera. Yeah. That was because a lot of us it's one thing to shoot this, and they showed it. A lot of us are starting to use rigs. So we're building these exoskeletons on top of our phones. And then we have a lot of things, lights and mics and all kinds of other stuff that's going around the iPhone. And one of the things that's easy for us to add is a hard drive, but there was nowhere to go with that right until today.
Do you know if it'll work with like the Atomos or the things that you use?
Oh no, I think you just hook up a hard drive. You just plug it into a hard drive and you're off to it'll be interesting to see what monitoring is available. So right now we have this adapter that is a Lightning to HDMI. The question is are we going to get something that's just USB-C? Like I have USB-C to HDMI cables, and will I be able to plug that into the iPhone again? I think I will.
I don't think it'll be HDMI. I think it'll be
it's
USB 3.2, right?
I have cables that are USB on one end and HDMI on the other.
That's what you want, though. You want HDMI out, not data.
No, you want data too. What I'm saying is there's a bunch of things that we're looking at with the phone. Can I get HDMI output, out of it? But also,
so is that fast enough? Is 10 gigabits fast enough?
10 gigs is fast enough. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. And so they have, and then they're talking about log encoding, which means that you can color correct it later. You've got the Apple ProRes, and the problem is once you start shooting Apple ProRes, we're like we thought the new feature is now you can take the videos off the phone, because it just fills up that phone, and you can tell that the camera's the most important part, and you can tell when you go to the Apple site and you roll through this. Notice that you'll notice at the bottom it says, do you want to focus on the phone? I don't know if you can see it with my lower third there, but there's a zoom into the phone that is hidden under my lower third. I think that is.
Zoom in on the camera.
So at every moment while you're talking about anytime you want, you can find out more about the camera.
Oh, that tells you something. So the page has a button all through the page. It says
floats over.
We know you just want to look at the camera.
We just want to know, and that shows you how important the camera is to the sales. By the way, we think that this iguana is very arrogant. Look at him. Look at him.
It is. Is it? I mean, look at there. Nothing else. Well, there are a few other points, but not much else is hugely improved. Is it a big improvement on the
really
camera?
Hard. Well, the 120 millimeters. So this is a
optical.
Optical. So it's
f2.8. Yeah.
It's using something that is like the periscope, but they just added to it. They just kept bouncing that light through there to give you that longer lens. And so it's similar to periscope, but it's not exactly a periscope the way that other people have implemented it. But that's giving you 120 millimeter, which is great. I mean, there's a lot of times when you wish you could reach out to 5x instead of 3x. They started adding millimeters to it, so it's no longer 1x, 2x, 3x.
Yeah, we now know what
30. Well, I don't know if it's
focal length is.
I don't know how true that is and what
they were doing
relates to, but
both
it feels
focal
good.
length and f-stops. They were clearly aimed at pro camera users.
And the macro 13 millimeter, 24 millimeter, 28 millimeter, 35, 48, and 120 millimeters.
Yeah. 7 lenses.
Quote 7 lenses.
And of course, with a lot of the computational photography, it's really zooming anywhere in between all of those as well. Right. The other big thing is that you saw the spatial cameras, and we talked about this. So a lot of us were thinking, hey, it looks weird to try to shoot this with your vision, but if you know that now you can shoot with your phone and share it with someone or future-proof it, it means that if you shoot with this phone now, you can get the spatial data that you might want to use somewhere in the future. And
they showed turning the phone on the side and using the side-by-side lenses in that really triangle
to get real stereo vision. Yeah,
and that's exactly what we talked about. And at the hydrogen phone that Andy and I have, the Apple lenses are a little wider than the.
Well, that's what I was wondering.
We definitely got. Is
the interocular distance enough on those?
It's enough
because they're very close together.
I don't know what Andy thinks of the hydrogen, but I thought that the 3D stuff the 3D experience is pretty good from the hydrogen phone, which has a smaller interaxial distance than the iPhone. What I will say though is that the best feature of this whole thing is that Spatial is going to force a lot of people to go back to landscape because it only works sideways. And so everyone who wants to future-proof their stuff is all going to turn sideways again. So it's great.
Well, they're trying to sell the Vision Pro, right? If you did not support some form of Vision Pro photography on this phone, you'd be missing a bet.
I can tell you, as someone who's seen stereo footage on that is shot, like by me on a headset on Oculus, when you start to see people shooting video and stills on their phones and you get to see it in a vision, it's going to change. Everyone's going to want to do it because you just feel like you're there. It's incredible. This is what I think Red wanted to do with the hydrogen phone. They just needed an ecosystem. And
can
Apple
you
has it.
see it on your 2D display, or do you have to have a helmet?
No, I think that this is doing the HEVC MV. So I think. I mean, I don't know yet because I'm on the phone and I haven't found it in the specs. But so HEVC MV has been around actually since about 2015. And what it does is it takes one eye, typically the left eye, and makes that the hero eye. So if you're watching on a 2D device, that's what you see. And then it compresses and keeps the right eye as the delta between those two, right? And so it's a single package. So it's not really putting out two whole eyes. And you can probably convert it somewhere, probably Final Cut or something like that. But it's basically a single package that has both of them together. That's what I think that they're going to do.
So on a 2D display, you will see a 2D display. You'll see the dominant eye.
Yep. But
if you happen to have a 3D display, in other words, a Vision Pro, you'll see. And what does it look like? Is it volumetric? Can you look behind it, or
you can't look back and forth? It's just that it's stereo. I mean, if you move back and forth, you might see a little bit. But the big thing is that it's going to feel like it's popping. It
feels more real,
and it's going to be really addicting. For people who get an access to it. And the big problem with a lot of these headsets has been that there was nowhere to generate the content. The 3D content isn't very interesting when you can only generate it with a really complicated rig. And, and I imagine that Facebook's going to figure out a way to take the spatial data and convert it to Oculus. And so it's, it's not just the vision that can handle this. Eventually, you're going to have a lot of people wanting to shoot footage for it. So,
how does this compare to like the Insta360 or the Ricoh Theta? Is that the same kind of 3D?
Those are 360. So they're not in. I mean, the Ricoh. I mean,
this is a completely different thing.
This is stereo, and Insta360 does have a stereo version of this. It's stereo 180. This is not stereo 180. This is stereo rectilinear. So it is a film frame, not fisheye. You're not looking back and forth or around. You're just seeing a film frame that's in 3D. Like you would go when you see a rectilinear 3D, it's like Avatar. It's like that kind of 3D. You're going to see that there to make that work.
So it'd be like a 3D movie.
It's like a 3D movie. Yep.
Okay.
Except your family.
I was kind of pleased by the Apple's show of faith in Vision Pro. I mean, obviously, this is not a developer-only device that is not going to be released till next year. Obviously, that's not something they were really going to be talking about at this event. But they made sure that they incorporated it as part of the family by saying that a interesting long hunk. When they're talking about how good the camera is with the spatial camera, and you can share it directly with the Vision Pro to give you immersive, like 3-dimensional panoramic experiences when you're watching, et cetera, as if to make, again, this is a device that it's thousands of dollars. It's not appropriate for all but a sliver of the market. And there are only going to be a couple, if worst case scenario, according to supply rumors, there are only going to be hundreds of thousands as opposed to millions of these. And yet they want to make sure that they're planting that flag in people's consciousness that we have this device that you will have eventually. But the good thing is, as you kind of hint at, Alex, that you're taking pictures now that you'll be able to enjoy on a device you might have in 4 years.
Well, and if you think about wanting to sell lots of Vision Pros, giving someone something they can generate content with that they can only see if they buy this product or use this product down the road creates a lot of potential energy, like that people are now thinking about it. And I will say, having seen a lot of footage that I shot on Oculus, and a couple other headsets, it is so exciting to see. Like when you see that experience, it feels really cool. And you definitely wish you could see everything that way. I've been using 3D cameras for the last 20 years of some way, shape, or form. So
I'm 100% with you. I was testing out a few years ago. Sony had a pair of HD electronic binoculars where they looked exactly like binoculars, but they were digital, and each binocular had an HD sensor and an HD display. And so it was quite a trip when, like, I'm at Faneuil Hall. I'm holding this thing up to my face to both get a better look at this street performer and also recording as I go. And then, like, a week later, I'm holding this same device up to my face, looking at it again and seeing in my entire field of vision 3D of exactly what I saw. It is super, super compelling. There's another camera feature that was.
How often do you do that, Andy?
If I
let's be honest.
Well, I mean, the thing is, you're right. It's not that I would spend thousands of dollars to have this as a separate sort of camera. But if the pictures that I was taking with my regular smartphone anyway was doing something clever, like, hey, there's two lenses side by side,
but it's not. I think that's the point. And let me ask Alex this.
In the future, right?
In the future, because right now it's a choice. You're going to say, I'm going to shoot this in spatial mode, or I'm going to use all these other features of the camera. Is that right?
Yeah, I don't know. I
we
think
don't know yet.
Yeah,
but since you have to use two lenses, so I'm thinking all the other stuff
it's its own mode.
It's a mode, which means you're not going to use it all the time, because even though someday somehow I'll be able to see my mom in 3D, I'm still going to use my regular camera 90%.
I could see someone doing both, like taking pictures.
Both. Okay.
I think you'd end up with someone, like.
You got to buy two,
not
Leo.
just two iPhones, but like, hey, let's do a portrait with everybody. Let's do one more with, let's do a quick portrait with this. Yeah. Switching back. I do that with different things all the time, and so the switching back and forth, I think, makes sense. And again, I think that you don't have, what Apple needs to do is not necessarily sell tens of millions of headsets. What it needs to do is sell all it can make. And for the first couple of years, it's going to sell all that it can make, with these products, because it's only going to make a couple 100,000 and then a couple million. And then, it's going to take 2 or 3 years for it to get up to capacity. But the fact that it's selling all the ones that it's making makes this easier to get started.
Yeah. I just more wish that there was like an additional mode that basically just said, look, capture as much data as you possibly can. You do, the iPhone does the best job of any phone I've ever used in terms of I tap the button, and in an instant the picture is taken and it never fails. It would be great if I could simply say, look, I'm willing to stay in this spot for a good 1/10 of a second. That means that, take the stereo picture. Yes, record an image from every single lens. Like, do lots of I'm not talking about something I would need to have a tripod for. I mean that it's taking a sequence of photos, but then bundling it all together so that as I'm editing later on, if like, oh, gee, I really wish I'd pulled out a little bit more. Well, congratulations. That also captured the wide angle version of it, so it can add in data from the sides. So there are a lot of ways it can improve the camera, and I'm glad that they're adding all these other things. One of the things that kind of caught my attention was when they were talking about the new action button, and to replace the silent ring silent switch, mechanical switch with this new haptic button. I love the fact that you could select basically what it does, not just make it ring silent. And one of the little icons, there was a selection of 9 icons that they showed quickly in a screenshot, and one of them was the camera. And I hope it wasn't just like press the action button to launch the camera. I would love it if that were also a shutter button, because that is for me, it's still such a natural way to do it. And sometimes it's such a fumbly way to make sure I'm holding it in such a way that I'm gripping the camera by its sides, but I'm also have a thumb free so I can tap a piece of glass. A lot of little things. I'm like you, I'm excited about the camera features, and that's, it's more than that in terms of the upgrades, like what it does for gaming. But yeah, the camera features are really superior.
And they showed, one of the ways that they're stabilizing this whole thing is they're actually stabilizing the sensor. So this is and they didn't show it here, but if you're
is that new? They've done that before.
No, they've done that before, but they said it's 3D. They're doing 3D movements up to 10,000 per second, which is twice as much as they did with last year's Pro. If I'm remembering up to 10,000 micro adjustments per second, which is double last year. There are 3-dimensional movements, first in any smartphone, and they actually singled that out as that was kind of critical to get the tetraprism telephoto work.
And the interesting thing there is whether they can go into much larger images.
Focal
so, for instance, once you're moving that little chip around like that in micro adjustments, Sony, the A7 S4 you can do a 61 megapixel, but you can take 240 megapixels it will move the whole chip by 1 pixel.
It bends.
And it just goes. No. It's actually
bending.
Moving. No. It's actually shifting the sensor to get a 240 megapixel image. And so
how is this different?
My Olympus does the same thing. Yeah.
How is this different from OIS in a Sony? Is it the same?
Well, most do it in the lens. So they're not doing it in the lens. They're doing it in the sensor, I believe.
Right.
But I think that I don't know exactly with Sony. Most of their optical stabilizations in their lenses in the larger ones. I don't know as much about their phones. Usually you do it in the lens because the lens is easier to do it in the lens because you don't have to be doing it in the chip.
It's a technology they got from Olympus. Olympus originally did it in the lens and eventually did it in the body. And I think Sony does both. So you have either in some lenses, not all lenses, you have OIS, and then they also have OIS in the body.
Yeah, that's why I went to Micro Four Thirds because at the time I was like, do I want to buy all like IS lenses, or do I just attach my 100-year-old lens to it and I still get stabilization? Yeah. I also like the fact that we're talking about how it has 7 quote like different lens focal lengths. I love the fact that you can set a default. Like just as though like you attach a specific lens to this thing. I want every time I turn this on, be in 35 millimeter wide mode, and you don't have to. Oh no, I just kind of you automatically went to full out. It's not just the hardware. They've also built a machine that is designed to not annoy people with its software and the way that it functions. I think
it is really interesting. We noted this, Mikah, when we were watching the event, that they are now talking about 35 millimeter, 120 millimeter. They're talking about the f-stops. They are aiming directly at Canon and Nikon and Sony going, and saying, well, you know, because I bring and I know you do too, Andy, you got a camera case with 4 lenses in it and a body or 2. They're saying, oh, yeah, you're carrying 7 lenses with you. Yeah. And it is, I mean, 120 isn't the longest possible, but they said they're doing 12x optical zoom is unbelievable.
Plus because they're using a 48 megapixel sensor, that's I think they said even with the binning, they're giving you 24 megapixel images. They'll say they'll even give you like a digital zoom that is essentially 12 megapixel that's just taking pixels from the heart of the image, and cooking it specially. So the optical stuff is good, but on every phone made by a really good company, what they can do digitally. Digital zoom used to be absolute garbage. Now it's like, okay, I'm not going to think it's garbage. I'm going to see what it does, because oftentimes it will do some very, very cool things. Maybe not my own camera. My own phone will do 4x optical zoom up to 20x digital. It's really good up to 8x or 10x. 20x, if that's the only way
it's
going
smudgy.
if it's the only way I'm going to get a picture of Harrison Ford at the boat dock, I'll take it. But that's about it.
This episode of Tech Break is brought to you by ACI Learning. ACI Learning's courses are easy to navigate, and their structure is much more straightforward than traditional training programs. Try it for yourself, and then bring the whole team along. For individuals, use the code TWiT30 for 30% off a standard or premium individual IT Pro membership at go.acilearning.com/twit.